All hail is breaking loose as severe weather creeps back into the picture. Unsettled weather will dominate much of the weekend on both coasts with a potential snow event. I'll have all the details plus today's weather IQ and an interesting this day in weather history that you won't want to miss. Plus, bird flu is back in the news. I'll tell you exactly what you need to know, so stay tuned and lock in. A new episode of Cold Rain's Weather World starts right now. Hello again, happy Thursday, folks. Jason Pritchard here with you with another edition of Cold Rain's Weather World, the only internet weather show that leaves you feeling better, more confident, and smarter. And to that end, we always start our show with our Weather IQ question. And so our question of the day is about clouds. How much do you know about clouds? Well, let's see how much you know here. So this is our question. What type of cloud is often associated with fair weather? Stratus, cumulus, cirrus, or nimbostratus. Okay, if you know the answer, type it in the comments section. If you don't know it, just simply wait until the end of the show and I will tell you the answer so you will know it and be smarter, as promised. So we've got a good bit on the agenda today, but we'll be able to get through it quickly because there's not a lot of super significant weather that requires us to do a very deep dive into. So while I'll have all of the segments broken out in the description of the video, so feel free to go ahead and skip ahead or skip around to the parts that are of interest to you. But we've got some things that we want to kind of get into, and I'll tell you what those are here in just a second. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel, though, if you haven't already done so. If you like the content, give us a like. Just hit that little thumbs up button, real quick to do, and it's right below the video, and so you can do that, and it helps the algorithm understand that people like the content. We'll push it out, and comment in the comment section too. That helps as well, and certainly if there's something I can pray over for you, I want to do that and build you up and certainly be there to help you out. So I appreciate you tuning in and hopefully enjoy the show. We're going to talk about the upcoming weekend. We're going to take a look at the weather over the next few days so that you can be prepared if you've got outdoor plans or kind of activities this weekend. You kind of understand what's going on. And then we'll take a look at the longer range as we get farther down the show and give you an idea of what's coming up in your work week next week. But we've also got a severe weather threat this afternoon. We're going to take a look at the details around that, see who's going to be affected and what kind of weather we're going to be looking at. And we've got a snow event potentially up in the Northeast, and we'll take a quick look at that too to get you guys up to speed on what's happening there. So as I said, I have all this stuff broken out and we'll get into it. But first thing we're going to do is, as always, really is take a look at our weather roundup, and we're looking at the upper level water vapor imagery today, and you kind of see the trough here in the East Coast. This is bringing in cooler weather, but it's also along this branch of the jet. We're seeing disturbances come in and setting off some showers and some snow showers this morning up in the Northeast. And we're looking at just a continued flow out of the northwest, which is, again, ushering in cooler air, warmer out west. And the southern branch you can see kind of poking in down here. It's really, really dry. Additional storm activities coming into the Pacific Northwest keep you guys unsettled for the first part of the weekend. Looking at the radar imagery, you can kind of see that here. So we're looking at showers and occasional rumble of thunder up from, say, Bristol up through eastern Kentucky. It's raining heavily here where you don't need it. Rivers are already above flood stage in a lot of these areas. Rain up from Columbus to Detroit, over into Pittsburgh, up into southern and western New York. You're seeing some snow shower activity up into Toronto, just around Bay City, north of Detroit as well. Rain shower, just occasional clouds and rain associated with some disturbances in the northern branch of the jet stream coming into Minnesota, Fargo, Duluth, Minneapolis, Sioux Falls, Des Moines. You're all picking up some occasional rain showers, and then some activity working into the west as well. We'll see some occasional showers out here in the Pacific Northwest too, as that activity kind of works on shore. Looking at our hazards map, not much going on, just some red flag warnings here in South Dakota into Nebraska and Kansas, where the winds will be up this afternoon, blowing things around, and the humidity is very low. So any outdoor burning that would take place would potentially spark wildfires and have those spread quickly. So be careful, don't burn in those areas, particularly in red flag warnings. You can't burn there anyway. See those river flood warnings I was talking about before. So a lot of rivers still at or above flood stage. Some fog up in northern Illinois and down in Texas and over again into New Mexico. So drive carefully if there's fog out there. That should burn off as the day wears on. Volcanic activity, not much going on. Kilauea, of course, in Hawaii. Great Sitkin under a watch for potential eruption there in the Aleutians. Spur, just to the west of Anchorage, is on an advisory still for a potential eruption, and some ash could make it into Anchorage if that happens, but nothing really going on too much. No major earthquakes in the last 24 hours. So that is good. I told you here at Cold Rain's Weather World, you get all the weather. So you don't just get rain and snow, you get all of it. So here's space weather, not a lot going on there either. No major sunspot activity and solar flares, coronal mass ejections, things of that nature. We've got a small geomagnetic storm potentially tomorrow that could light up some of the aurora for some of the higher latitudes. So watch out for that if you live way up there, maybe north of the Canadian border. But looking at our sensible weather as we get on in to this afternoon, showers moving into the Pacific Northwest. Those showers continue through much of the, upper and mid Mississippi River Valley and over into the Tennessee Valley, and of course up here into the as we get on into the eastern lakes as well. We put this into motion. We start to see those showers and thunderstorms associated with this energy in the upper levels of the atmosphere, generating a small low pressure system that'll continue to organize and strengthen slowly over the next day or two. But it'll push some showers into the Carolinas, down into Georgia potentially as we get on into tomorrow. And then that sort of winds up as we get into tomorrow afternoon. So much of the southeast into the southern mid-Atlantic tomorrow evening will kind of be a washout. So into Saturday morning as well. So at least in the northern areas there, lower mid-Atlantic, northern mid-Atlantic, you'll start to see some shower activity pick up there. So tomorrow morning and afternoon could see a slippery commute out in the southeast. Just a few showers out here in the Pacific Northwest as well. That low winds up really in earnest on Saturday, starts to send some rain and snow up here into the New England area. So you can kind of see that here Saturday afternoon. You see a little bit of snow sort of mixing in with the rain as temperatures cool down, a column cools. And up here in southern New England, we're starting to see some snow mix in. And so we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But that all pulls out Sunday. By Sunday, we're looking at Saturday evening overnight. We're looking at really clearing out in terms of the precipitation for much of the eastern seaboard except along the coast. Now this is the European. The GFS actually runs this a little closer to the coast, and so you're seeing precipitation continue to hang on inland in parts of New England on Sunday. So be aware if you're in northern New England, northern mid-Atlantic, you could stay socked in with clouds, drizzle, light rain, maybe even some snow showers, the northern parts of that into Sunday. We'll have to continue to see how the models converge on that. So pay attention up there. Farther south should be a nice weekend on the back half of the weekend anyway. Saturday afternoon into Sunday should be nice. Maybe a little bit of a breezy conditions and cool as well, warmer back into the plains. And then up here in the north, you're seeing some shower activity across the northern high plains that has worked in from the Pacific Northwest. So probably going to be cloudy and drizzly up here in the north, but dry across the south. So if you've got plans down there, it's going to be dry and hot. Looking at our temperatures this afternoon, chilly across the northeast, 40s and 50s, 60s and 70s as you get down here into the southeast. Really, the hot weather is across the southern border where you're getting into the 90s down here in places like Corpus Christi and over into southern Arizona. Up into the northern plains, you're looking at temperatures into the 60s, Intermountain West 60s and 70s. As we go into Friday afternoon, I'm a day ahead already. Friday afternoon, much more of the same, a little bit warmer up in the northern plains. You're making a run at 70 all the way up here in North Dakota. Chilly in the Rockies and the Pacific Northwest, but much warmer across the south. And as you get down toward the southern border now, you're looking at 100 potentially in the desert Southwest, 60s down into parts of the coastal area, 60s and 70s, and down to the panhandle of Florida, 40s, 50s across much of the north as that trough works in. Saturday, much of the same sort of pattern, 40s, 50s up here in the north. East down to the southeast where that trough hangs on, nice and warm in the plains, 90s in Texas and southern parts of the desert Southwest. And again, nice and chilly up in the northeast. Same pattern, except it gets a little hotter as we get into Sunday. Some parts of Texas could feel like summer and experience temperatures in the upper 90s and hundreds. And then it starts to warm up again in the south as we get, as the sun breaks out. Sun angle is getting a little higher this time of year, so it's going to be more efficient at warming us up. And so south, we're looking at North Carolina, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Florida. We're looking into the 60s and finally getting into this near 70 as well. So chilly weather hanging on up in the northeast. That is your weekend roundup, folks. If you've got plans along the northeast, pay attention. We could have some rain hanging in through the bulk of the weekend, rain potentially and snow up in the northeast. Otherwise, it should clear out as we get into Saturday afternoon toward places like Virginia and south of there into the Carolinas. Warm and nice for much of the southern tier of the country through the weekend as well. There's a marginal risk of excessive rainfall for tomorrow for parts of North Carolina from Raleigh up into southern New Jersey, really, including Washington, D.C., Norfolk, Roanoke, places like that, Greensboro. But we're not really expecting to see widespread flooding here. It's just a marginal risk, so I thought I would show it to you. But some of the persistent showers that will develop, they'll be kind of heavy at times and could cause some street flooding. Maybe 1 to 2 inches of rain would fall in a short period of time, and that's why that risk is there. But it is there, and I wanted to show it to you because of that reason. The severe weather threat is kind of the main story, and mainly for hail and wind. So we can see here from southern Kentucky to the Boot Hill of Missouri, northeastern Arkansas, most of Tennessee, western Georgia, including the Atlanta metro area, and then Alabama, northern parts of Alabama and Mississippi, looking at potentially a wind threat and a hail threat this afternoon. 15%, not going to be a big severe weather outbreak, not looking at the whole entire area being overrun with severe weather. But what's going to happen is cooler air is coming in aloft, and so the upper levels are going to really, really cool down. We do not have a vigorous warm sector with really warm temperatures and dew points in the 70s. So we're not seeing massive levels of CAPE. We're not going to see a big severe weather outbreak. But because cooler air is working in, that increases the hail threat, and some of the dry air aloft can exacerbate the wind threat as evaporational cooling happens within the context of the thunderstorm. So that's why we have a severe weather threat today. We'll probably start out with some supercells that kind of merge later on and organize a little bit into some line segments or some clusters. That's what we're looking at. So a few spots in here will pick up some hail and potentially some wind damage as well. Looking at tomorrow, that threat shifts over to the east portions of North Carolina. And again, tomorrow even, we're not looking at a widespread event. It's a very marginal risk. And there's some model disagreement here. There's some models that kick convection off thunderstorm activity off late in the morning and early afternoon. If that happens, that will eat up what little instability exists. And when the main focus for the lift and energy comes in the upper atmosphere, it won't have much to work with, and that would diminish the severe threat. Other models kind of hold that activity off until later in the afternoon. It kind of overlaps the two ingredients that you would need to see for severe weather, so that would enhance the risk a little bit. But again, we're not looking at tornadoes and we're not looking at a widespread event. We're looking at a few thunderstorms possible with some wind and hail reports. Even outside of that, it wouldn't surprise me in some of these green areas to see a few wind reports or some small hail pop up as well, since freezing temperatures or levels are going to be a little lower upstairs. Looking out next Monday, there's a 15% chance here in the lower Ohio Valley of some severe weather. We're not going to focus too much on that today, as it's very, very ill-defined at this point in time, but it's enough of a risk that the SPC wanted to mention it, so I wanted to show it as well. This afternoon, we're looking at dew points, and I'm going to roll this back so we can see. But dew points, again, last event, we had dew points in the 60s and 70s over a wide area. And what we see here, 30s, 40s, 50s, kind of working in. This afternoon, we're looking at 50s, maybe making it into Middle Tennessee, middle 50s, mid 50s over much of the area that we're focusing on for severe weather. So we're really not looking at huge moisture return out of the Gulf. That pushes on off into tomorrow afternoon into the Carolinas. So again, 40s and 50s for dew points. Not going to have tons of low-level heating or moisture to work with. The jet stream here at 500 millibars, you're seeing this jet streak that's bringing wind shear aloft as that works into the area this afternoon. So that wind differential, as you kind of increase wind with height, that's an ingredient for thunderstorm development, and that can help to organize some of those thunderstorms into clusters and line segments. And so you're seeing that'll push off into the south on Friday, help to get an area of low pressure organized, which is what we saw earlier when we looked at the surface map. You saw that low pressure with rain around it, and that'll continue to organize over the course of Friday into Saturday and spread rain outside of thunderstorm activity up into portions of the mid-Atlantic into southern New England, maybe with some snow as well. So that's what's kind of fueling our severe weather. Looking at the activity of how this all will play out, we're seeing some showers out here today. This is depicted this morning. If we roll this forward a little bit, you can kind of see how this plays out over the course of the afternoon today. Looking at here, let's get on a better display for this so we can see the whole thing. You can kind of see this activity start to develop over Kentucky and Tennessee over the course of the afternoon. We're looking at around 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. East Coast time. We're seeing little clusters of storms. So again, not an area-wide event, just little clusters. And where those clusters develop and persist through the late evening hours as we approach midnight, that'll, you could see some hail and some wind with those. That'll move this model is still showing that activity kind of continuing in the overnight hours. It wanes a little bit as we get toward daybreak, and then it will reemerge later tomorrow afternoon. You sort of see it start to reinvigorate under the cold core. Again, no severe weather really out here in Tennessee tomorrow, but maybe some small hail if thunderstorms can develop under that cold core. Western North Carolina seeing some rain showers tomorrow afternoon, and then in the east in the evening. And so all of that kind of winds down as we get into Saturday. So that should shape up Saturday afternoon for a nice weekend. Could even see some sneaky snow if temperatures can cool off quickly enough while there's enough moisture around here in the Appalachian Mountains and the higher peaks out here. So keep a watch for that. So as promised, a fun this day in weather history. This is an interesting one. I mentioned this on a previous episode, but today, April the 10th, 1815, a major volcanic eruption created such an event and ejected so much matter into the atmosphere that the following year, 1816, was considered the year without a summer. You may have heard of that, and you may have heard of the volcano, Tambora. Well, Tambora is in Indonesia, and it erupted catastrophically, and it ejected about 12 cubic miles of magma into the atmosphere. It was such an explosive eruption, and it created a crater of 4,100 feet deep. As I said, it led to a volcanic winter where global temperatures plunged 5 degrees, and in 1816 it was considered the year without a summer because it did not warm up very much. And it led to crop failures in North America, in Europe, and in Asia. And it was for context, on the VEI scale, which is the Volcanic Explosivity Index scale, which goes from 0 to 8, 8 being the highest, it was a 7, a super colossal. See Mount Tambora in 1815 here on our scale. Yellowstone, if it were to erupt, would be an 8 and probably wipe out much of the Earth's population. Fortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to erupt anytime soon. Krakatoa was a colossal, a 6, and Mount St. Helens, for perspective, was a 5. So the interesting thing is these go up by orders of magnitude. So each one that goes up is 10 times more powerful than the previous rating on the scale. So if that makes sense. Also, quick, do you know bird flu is back in the news? H5N1 is the bird flu variant, and this has been talked about for years and years, and you've heard of it, of course. A whistleblower blew the whistle, so to speak, on a Chinese paper that had apparently been covered up, and it shows that there is a variant now of that is leading to higher transmission rates among humans. It's still fairly low. I mean, they're finding most of the human-to-human transmissions between family members with the same sort of genetic makeup, and a lot of this is happening in poultry production areas where they grow poultry or process it or whatever. So it's still fairly contained. However, there's been a lot of viral, respiratory illnesses happening in mainland China, and the official word is that it's just strange respiratory illnesses. But some people are speculating that it could be bird flu kind of passing around. The other thing interesting to know about bird flu is that you hear it's like these high mortality rates. It's like 50%. The reality is that a lot of the cases go unreported and a lot of cases are asymptomatic. And so the real fatality rate of bird flu is likely much, 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 much less than 50%. That doesn't stop us from being concerned about it. It's something to be concerned about, but not anything to panic about. So if you hear about that coming back in the news, that's what's going on. Thought it'd be interesting to share with you. All right, the other fun thing that we're going to look at here is snow potentially this weekend, and that is in the Northeast. And there's a couple of discrepancies here in the modeling. So if we look at the European model here, it shows this little low pressure that we're talking about winding up Friday afternoon. This is Friday afternoon and into the evening hours on Friday. And then Saturday morning, that begins to wind up and head up the coast. So we get into the overnight hours Friday night into Saturday morning. Look what happens at 8 a.m. We're seeing rain up and down the East Coast here and drying out in the Southeast and just getting into southern New England. And the European model itself isn't showing here. Let's make sure we're on the right display here. I want to show rain and snow. There it is. Yeah, I was on the wrong one. So you can kind of see as it starts to wind up, we get into Saturday morning, some snow is mixing in as it's starting to cool down aloft. And so you get little pockets of snow mixed with the rain. We're still talking about temperatures at right around freezing. So it's not going to be like teens and blizzard conditions or anything like that. But we could see a little bit of snow up here in the Northeast, yet again, southern New England this time, instead of northern New England that we've seen last time. The GFS is a little bit different. I mentioned this before. So the GFS sort of plays this out, and look what it does. It keeps the low a little farther to the east, or the west rather, and it runs the precipitation up inland through Saturday morning, still raining here in North Carolina. And then that sort of starts to dry out, but you get a lot more of that precipitation into the pattern into New England. It sort of stays in there in place. I'm not sure why it got off of the wrong display, but here's the rain snow display, and look at this. So southern New York. So looking near Philly, up into Albany, Saratoga Springs, Springfield, Massachusetts, Springfield, New Hampshire, up into Vermont, southern New England around Portland, Bangor. Look at this. You're looking at a little bit of snow in there close to Boston. And so that, 12-hour snow event could add up a little bit of snow, maybe 2 to 4 to 6 inches. Again, it's going to be right around freezing, but it could make for some slick spots on the roads. And then Sunday or Saturday evening, it's still kind of hanging on here throughout the evening hours. We get on into Sunday, and then everything kind of pushes off. So hopefully Sunday afternoon can kind of warm up here. Looking at snowfall totals, the European is showing, as much as 6 inches from northern New Jersey up into southern New York, just north of the city, and over here into Pennsylvania as well. But generally a widespread 1 to 2 to 4 inches potentially. Some of this is going to melt. The GFS is much, much bigger. Again, this is just total snow. It's not taking into account melting, and it's certainly not taking into account the warm layers of the atmosphere that might melt some of this snow or keep it from being an efficient snow producing. As a matter of fact, let's look here if we can do total Kuchera. Kuchera, I said I should say Kuchera. It's a little bit less. This is again discrepancy with the models, but could be a nice little snow event, maybe 4 to 6 inches of snow in this corridor here. We'll have to play it by ear as we get into the weekend, but pay attention if you live anywhere from, say, the Philly area up into Portland, Maine, and places like Albany, again, Springfield, and all of that. So pay attention up here in the Northeast. Probability exists of snow for 1 inch of snow. That you're seeing these red areas, this higher probabilities, 90 to 100%. If we look at probabilities of 3 inches of snow, that goes down quite a bit. So there are quite a number of different scenarios here that could play out to impact snow amounts. So be careful of that situation there, but be prepared to see snow in any of these areas. And if you're traveling up here, just understand that's in the cards. Now, looking down the line as we go on out past the weekend. So we're looking at Monday here. Here's a jet stream pattern. Ridge out west, kind of trough in the east. Over time, you'll see that another cold shot comes into the east, warms back up out west, and that just persists a little bit as we get on into next week, toward next weekend. Another cool shot toward the weekend, but after that we start to see this ridge returning into these. You can kind of see that here by these lines. Ridges and troughs are denoted by these lines. Don't necessarily focus so much on the colors, but you can see the lines here, how they do. And you can see this big ridge here in the south and in the east, and then over a little trough coming into the west coast. So could see some moderation in the east as we get on in to the end of April. In the meantime, it's going to be a little chillier than normal. Precipitation and storm activity, generally speaking, we're going to have kind of a quiet pattern. We're not seeing any major weather events over the next week or so, just a few, maybe some systems along the East Coast from time to time. There's, again, this is way out in time, so it's hard to pinpoint all of this stuff, but that's a pretty strong system on the East Coast as we get on into the 19th and the 20th. But, again, just really no big severe weather outbreaks is the takeaway. And we're going to be chilly in the east and warmer out west this time period. And this bears that out too. So Monday into Tuesday, warm on the east coast, out ahead of a new front. A new big push of cold air comes in through the middle of the week. Next week, look at that big purple color. It's going to be quite a bit below normal again as we could see some more freezing concerns as we get into next week. So, continue to keep an eyeball on those plants. Warm out west. As we get into the next weekend, still chilly in the east. Got that trough here, big ridge out west, keeping us warm out in the Great Plains, Four Corners area. And then everything starts to warm up a little bit as we get toward the end of April. And so that's what the pattern looks like. The National Weather Service has put out their prediction, of course, and we're looking at, this is CPC, so below normal in the east, that sort of bears out what we just showed you. Above normal out west, below normal precipitation out west, above in the middle of the country. Look at this, finally getting some above normal returns down here where we need rain in the western Texas, eastern New Mexico area. And then wrapping everything up here with a look at North Carolina weather through the weekend. We can see that rain coming in tomorrow. So as we get into tomorrow morning, wet commute for much of the state, much of Virginia, much of South Carolina is under clouds with precipitation into tomorrow evening. See all of that kind of in the European model here is kind of showing everything breaking up as we get into tomorrow evening and overnight, and pulls out on Saturday with the exception of the coastal areas. Could see a little bit of rain hanging on here and some general clouds through the day on Saturday, but then warming up on Sunday and clearing out as well. Your average rainfall across the state, generally 0.5 inches to 1 inch, a little bit more across the northern sections up here toward Roanoke Rapids. Certainly see a little bit more up there. Looking at temperatures this afternoon, chilly in the foothills and the mountains, 50s and 60s out here, a little bit below normal. And then we get over into Greensboro, 67, 70 in Raleigh, Elizabethtown down here at 74, Fayetteville at 74. That's the warm spot, the kind of the southeastern section of North Carolina, and then chilly along the coast, I'm sure with sea breezes and things like that. And then a little bit cooler tomorrow, or as we get on into Friday. Friday's going to look chillier as that system kind of comes in. We get clouds and rain around, 60s for the most part, even some 70s down here in the southeastern portion of North Carolina. And I'm not even on the right display, so you can't really see it. Hey, there we go. Boom, right there. That's what we want. So again, back on that. Here, I'll back it up one day so you can see Friday. There's Friday. You see the whole state. And then Saturday, cooling down everywhere, 30s and 40s up in the higher peaks, and 60s, 50s and 60s for much of the rest of the state. And a little bit of a rebound on Sunday. We start to get into the upper 60s again in the southern part of the state, northern part of the state, hang on to the lower 60s. And that is it for today, folks. We're going to wrap up with today's Weather IQ, as we always do. And if you have paid attention in earth science in school, you will know the answer to this. And if that was not something that was interesting to you at all, then you probably aren't watching the weather show. So you probably already know the answer to this, is what I'm trying to say. What type of cloud is often associated with fair weather? Stratus, cumulus, cirrus, or nimbostratus? And the answer is, of course, cumulus clouds. You see those puffy white clouds pop up in the summertime. There's enough instability to start to create clouds, but there's usually a cap on the atmosphere, and those clouds only develop so high, and then they just don't grow any further. And so when you see a field of cumulus clouds in the afternoon in the summertime, spring, late spring, early fall, you often understand that to be associated with fair weather. Stratus clouds are low and gray and oftentimes can produce rain. Nimbostratus is actually the low-grade field of clouds that's producing lots of rain, nimbo. When you see nimbo, that means it's going to be raining. And then cirrus are those high wispy clouds that exist way up in the upper atmosphere. A lot of times they precede inbound storms. So when you see cirrus clouds, you might think there's a weather system coming, and that is often true. So that is your weather IQ for today. That is the show for today. Now you know the weather. And as always, this is Cold Rain reminding you that if other channels run 24/7, we got you covered 48/14 right here at Cold Rain's Weather World. Take care, folks. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you back tomorrow.